Now is the time for public comments. Any comment on items on this agenda?
We're not on the agenda.
No? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move on to the city manager's report. Sabrina?
Sure, thank you. Mayor Asher, I have a representative from AC Transit here tonight per the request of the mayor after the most recent incident that occurred at the end of January. The mayor had asked that we have someone come, and so he's here to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Asher and members of council. I'll give you a brief overview first of what occurred. Lindy, our fuel provider, was providing a fuel delivery that day. And when they were providing the delivery, there was a valve that in the system that stuck in the open position, which resulted in, over time, the pressures in their fuel tank increasing to the point where a relief valve acted the way it's supposed to. We have the safety relief valve, so if you get a certain pressure, that it starts to vent. And so once it started venting, the gas, our staff noticed that, and they pressed where we have emergency shutdown valves in the system. That notified Lindy that we had a situation. They responded to the incident. In the meantime, our staff is very cautious, and they always want to make sure that we don't have any incidents where we could have anybody injured. So they also contacted 911 and made sure that we had emergency personnel standing by in case there was something. But the good news is that the system design worked as designed. It wasn't a high pressure release like it was about a year ago. It was a low pressure, relatively low pressure release, and it started to release gas until the pressure subsided, and then the Lindy folks came on and then switched over the valves to the other bank of safety release devices. Since that time, we've worked with Lindy and put in some other measures to further enhance the system beyond what it was before. Right now, there's another alarm sensor in the tank that's going to identify when the pressures start to increase above 140 psi. The tank normal pressure is 110 psi. If it increases above 140, they'll get a notification so they can start to respond and check things out right away, or trip the emergency relief device and just shut the system down on their own. And that the relief valve, the safety valves don't go off until 175 and 220 psi. So there's a big gap in between there. So they should be able to address that. In addition to that, we had Lindy replace all the internal, all the valves that had suspect issues or activated during that process. And we've required Lindy to have some new refueling procedures related to low pressure and high pressure fueling of the tanks to prevent this type of incident occurring in the future. Until that's all in place, we actually have their technicians are going to be there at every fuel delivery until all those procedures and everything are locked in place. But the good news here was that all the safety mechanisms worked as designed, and because when there is any increase in pressure, you want the pressure relief valves to release the gas as opposed to it continuing to increase until something would happen to the tank. So that's a summary of what occurred. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, I have a question. When you say that Lindy responded to the incident, do they respond by phone? Where is Lindy? How long does it take them to get here? Do they show up on site afterwards? What does that look like? What does
they have. I have actually representatives here. They can actually ask and answer. Tom, you want to answer some of those questions? Come up and we have. There are technicians on site almost daily, but on the off hours or they will have to respond from their dispatch center.
Okay, so normally the system has a PLC that monitors all the different parameters, pressures, temperatures, different flow rates. And so that's equipped with an auto dialer system that actually calls out, and it'll phone my technicians that are local in the area. They're based at Richmond, so it's pretty close. And so they'll get those calls from the auto dialer. If we don't have the auto dialer, for example, they hit the e-stop, we'll get an alarm from that. So if it's not an alarm condition and there's something that happens on site and the people on site feel like they need to punch out the system there's over 11 specific spots where they can just hit a button and it isolates everything. So from that point, we get another alarm and we would get a call out from there. And additionally, we've changed the pressure setting alarm on the tank. So we do get that alarm now at 140.
Okay, other questions from
Yeah,
council?
I have a couple of questions. So what type of response time do they have for your employees to show up? Is it 1 hour? Is it depending on the time?
Typically, depending on what's going on, Bay Area traffic is its own beast, as you know, living in the area. It's really hard to commit to saying a specific amount of time given the gridlock that does occasionally happen. But like I said, typically we have at least one person as close as Richmond.
But you have one person that's on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week?
We have, so at our National Operations Center in New Jersey, that's always manned, and they get the alarms. They also get the phone calls if the customer calls a 800 number, they can get through to them, and they can call our technicians on the cell phones and get somebody en route.
But 24 hours a day, 7 days a week?
Yes.
Okay. What's your maintenance schedule for all this equipment?
It varies actually by the equipment type and what's going on with the various equipments. For example, the compressors have a different maintenance interval than a motor or a relief valve or whatever the different components are. There's hundreds of parts on these systems, and they all have PMs that are industry standards and that are recommended at the frequency of the original equipment manufacturers. So that's in a computerized database, and then that generates a work order based on the schedule or the run hours of the station, whichever is appropriate for that equipment.
So you don't test the system as a system, you test the components within the system?
Yes.
Don't you think you'd be better off testing the system as a system?
We test the whole system together also. The
How often?
e-stops on the station are interrelated to all portions of the station.
Yeah, but how often do you do that? What's your testing cycles is what I guess what I want to know.
On the e-stops?
Well, on everything.
Or on every-
How often
like I
does,
said, it varies per component, and there's literally, in our maintenance system, there's over 600 pieces of equipment. So to go through the list off the top of my head, I couldn't do that and be accurate on the frequencies when they vary from monthly to 6 monthly to 1 year to 2 years to 5 years. We have a very robust PM system in place.
Other questions from
Yeah,
council?
I have
Nora?
Some questions. I'm interested in, how often do you make deliveries to the Emeryville plant?
Typically about once every week or two.
And what is the record of Lindy with incidents that happen, that occur when there's a transfer, when they come and they fill tanks? Who keeps a record of that? What I'm trying to get at, do these things happen on a somewhat regular basis when there's delivery made? Who would keep a record like that?
That would be as far as industry-wide or company-wide, that'd be somebody in New Jersey probably. As far as whether this is a normal occurrence, this is not a normal occurrence. However, it is something that the system design plans for a contingency, and that's why all of the safeties are set where they're set, and they will go and discharge the gas to a safe discharge point through a vent stack and direct it away from any hazardous areas where it's not going to get ignited. So the system design is designed so that if you have overpressure, then you relieve it to a safe point, and you don't break any equipment by relieving it. It's the same type of valve that everyone has on their water heater at home. It relieves the pressure so you don't have the tank on your water heater break. It's very common in the industry to have safety valves, and not just for hydrogen, but for any kind of gaseous system. You would have a safety valve to prevent any kind of overpressurization on a vessel.
Do you know if this kind of incident has ever happened in refueling before?
let me introduce myself. My name is Stuart Becker. I'm with Lindy. I have 35 years in the industry with a lot of experience with hydrogen. You asked about who has records of incidents. The Compressed Gas Association, all the members in the industry, Lindy, Praxair, Air Liquide, Air Products are members of the Compressed Gas Association. If you wanted to look on their website, they would have
Well,
major
I
incidents.
appreciate what you're saying, that, pardon me, it's not a normal occurrence, but we really don't take people's words for it. I would like to see some records. If you keep them industry-wide, I think it's behooves AC Transit to take a look at that and see whether there is some kind of problem with deliveries and whether accidents happening during these deliveries. Once a week, 52 times a year, you're coming into our city and making deliveries, and we want to make sure that this is not a normal occurrence.
Right.
Can you do that, AC Transit?
Do that.
Yes, we will do that, definitely.
Thank you.
So let me just make a few comments here. These systems, the hydrogen fueling station is unique. There's about 28 in United States. There's more to come. Hydrogen vehicles are going to be pretty popular, okay? But the liquid hydrogen station where the fuel is kept is about a 50-year-old industry. Okay, there's probably 100 liquid hydrogen stations in California alone, about 50 in the Bay Area. It's very common in the South Bay for electronics customers. So liquid hydrogen is around. The liquid hydrogen deliveries, it's manufactured in Ontario in Southern California, and we purchase it from a competitor. So this is a very common practice. It may be unique in the city of Emeryville, and I understand that, and we will get the information. But it's a safe industry. It's been around a long time, and there are a number of safeguards. This particular unit is unique in that, as Tom mentioned, it has a hydrogen fueling station there. It has a bunch of advanced electronics and components there. It is monitored 24/7. Besides just calling out a person, there's an onboard computer there that looks at all these parameters. We have a manned center back east that will get the phone calls or look online. We could see the entire system on a computer. Tom's technicians, as part of their troubleshooting, if they get a call from the system, will look on their laptop, look at the system, understand what the duress is. If they need to punch it out at that point and put it in a safe mode, they can. We've done extensive training with AC Transit personnel, so they understand what's common, what's not common. They have local emergency stops, the e-stops that Tom's talking about, so they can put it in a safe mode. So this is unique to the city of Emeryville, but fairly standard in the industry. But
Jack,
we're willing to
Go ahead, Norm.
answer
I'd
any
like
questions.
to ask our representative from Alameda County Fire, could you address what these gentlemen are saying?
Yes, ma'am, I
for
can.
Keith?
The gentlemen are actually correct on what they're actually saying. You have to go through a number of safety requirements, NFPA, National Fire Protection, and then also the Uniform Fire Code and Building Code. It's nothing different or unique that we're used to dealing with. As a matter of fact, this is a facility that actually has a lot of these safety mechanisms that are put into place that should something happen, as in the case that happened in January when they were offloading the fuel, that one of their wafers actually, because of the valve froze and malfunction, actually went off. So what essentially you saw was basically the hydrogen hitting the air, which is probably, because it's a cryogenic, it's minus 450 degrees. So when it hits the atmosphere, what it looks like is a huge plume of a cloud with actually no toxins. So, yes, ma'am, I believe, this.
Are there any other facilities like this in Alameda County?
There are, like the gentleman said, I believe they're probably somewhere in the neighborhood about anywhere from 20 to 50.
Any
somewhere.
in your jurisdiction, in Alameda County Fire?
In my jurisdiction, ma'am, I'm not really quite sure that we have a number of them in our area, but I do know that there are a number in the Bay Area as well as in the nation.
I could answer that. I know for a competitor that I work for in Alameda County, Fremont is in Alameda County, there's units in Fremont where Silicon Valley started to grow and went into Fremont. There's hydrogen stations in Fremont. I'm not sure. We're building another bus fueling station in Oakland right now.
Whereabouts is that going to
AC
be?
Transit, Seminary Road.
East 14th Street?
It's at our seminary division down in central Oakland, yeah.
Okay. And I just have one other question, and it kind of follows along with what Councilmember Kurt Brinkman asked. This, he has the same concern I do, that you test separate components of the system, but I didn't hear a clear answer of how often and how regularly you test the unit as a whole.
So I
Complete
could answer
testing.
that. At minimum, the entire system is tested on an annual basis. The components, like Tom says, have different preventive maintenance cycles, but at a minimum, a trained technician comes there and puts the whole system through its paces and has a checklist and goes through and makes sure all the safety devices work, all the critical safety systems work, and that the unit is good for the next annual period. In between time, there may be some subcomponents that may come up for testing. The safety.
But there is an annual inspection.
Yes.
Yeah.
And who regulates that? Does a government entity regulate it, or does the company regulate it?
I'm not sure there's any regulation. I think it's an industry standard that would be discussed through the Compressed Gas Association. So I came from a competitor a few years ago, and it was a similar type of industry standard there. For our clients, like AC Transit, they could literally go online, and I think we talked about this at the last meeting, and look at the last inspection. And look at this. It's very transparent as to what we do for the clients. Look at each delivery, and all this is a database that they interface with us.
Well, could those reports be given to the city once a year and say that in Alameda County Fire so that we know that this test has occurred?
I'll look at the availability of that. I'm
You know,
sure.
I mean, it's just a date on the calendar, so
Yeah.
just give us a date and then send the reports in saying,
We'll get back to you through AC
Yeah.
Transit
Okay.
and see how to make that available.
And one last thing, how often does Lindy train with AC Transit employees around the fueling?
Well, we have regular training for that. We try to do it quarterly to go through some type of training sessions, and we also look at our emergency procedures on a quarterly basis to make sure that if there is something like this, that our Operations Control Center knows who to call, and they can quickly respond to any type of incidents that may occur.
Okay.
okay.
Any other questions from council?
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.